I'm Alleana Fuentes. People call me Miss Alleana, and I work as a full-time clinical psychologist. So specifically at the hospital I work in, I've been working here since around late 2019, so before the pandemic. And then before that, I pursued clinical psychology since 2015, so around 10 years already that I've been doing this. When you approached me with a topic, I found it really interesting that I wanted to kind of talk about it also and kind of like hear opinions about it, because I feel like it's a really relevant topic, especially recently. It's something we weren't really trained on when we were still in grad school in our program training, but it's really relevant because I see a lot of clients here that go through that, experience different things with that. So yeah, it's very interesting.
What physiological mechanisms drive people to ghost others or stay in undefined relationships?
Okay. So I think in terms of psychological mechanisms, there's different reasons why people ghost. What we usually see in here in the therapy setting are the people that end up being ghosted rather than those that ghost. But sometimes we do see people that have tendencies to also ghost or engage in situationships. What I've seen is that a lot of times it tends to come from a place of avoidance, wherein people struggle to maybe communicate clearly what they want from a relationship, how they want to define what it is that they have as a dynamic. And at the same time, if there are hard conversations that are there, a lot of times that also becomes a reason for people to go. So mostly it comes from a place of avoidance, avoiding confrontation, avoiding conflict, avoiding difficult topics, avoiding difficult feelings is what I noticed.
How does uncertainty in modern digital dating contribute to anxiety, insecurity, or emotional distress?
I think it does create a lot of space for people to overthink things, to kind of like not really have a definition, so that makes them think of like different what ifs, different possibilities. So I think when things are uncertain and unclear, it leads to a lot more space for anxiety. And when anxiety is there, sometimes that leads to thoughts, to behaviors that also might actually be damaging, not just to one's self-esteem, but also to the relational dynamic in general. So yes, I feel like it does cause a lot of distress when things aren't clear, especially as it is with situationships and ghosting.
What are some common coping strategies people use to deal with being ghosted or stuck in a situationship? Are these strategies healthy or harmful?
I think there's a wide range of reactions that people do. So for example, when people are in situationships, sometimes they choose to stay in it and keep being distressed. And then some people may choose to leave that situationship and also go through grief. And some of those could be healthy if it helps them heal eventually. Some may be harmful if they continue to experience distress in situations that aren't really serving them. When it comes to ghosting, I feel like people cope again through a wide range of different things. So if they are ghosted, some of them do tend to experience a lot of grief, a lot of anxiety, so they cope by either distracting themselves or sometimes wallowing in the situation, really being deep in breakdowns, emotional expressions, while some kind of take it a bit of a different way where they also end up ghosting other people. So that's when it gets to the extreme where what they experience are also behaviors that they end up doing to others, so it kind of perpetuates that cycle where they end up being ghosters also. They end up avoiding certain difficult conversations, and it again continues that cycle to other people, other dynamics, and other relationships.
How does repeated exposure to ghosting or ambiguous relationships affect self-esteem and trust in future relationships?
A lot of times it actually negatively affects one's self-esteem, their views on relationships, because if one gets continuously subjected to ghosting or being in situationships, they can't help but feel like there's not enough that they can offer. So sometimes it does negatively affect how they view themselves, their self-worth, their self-esteem all get affected in a bit of a negative way, because it does represent a certain layer of rejection or abandonment, and experiencing that can be hurtful for everybody, especially those that keep doing that or keep being on the receiving end of that. So more often than not, they might experience maybe symptoms similar to depressed feelings, anxious feelings, and all those other emotional reactions in a bit of a negative way.
Why do some people find it harder to move on from situationships compared to formal relationships?
I feel like that was one of the biggest questions I also had while we were also going through different therapy sessions with clients, because it seemed like those that were coming from situationships would tend to have a harder time moving on compared to those in like defined relationships. And what we've kind of figured out is that most of the time in those situationships, it tends to be left hanging in terms of like a positive way, or like it's left in a place where it's a lot of potential, a lot of what ifs, compared to defined relationships where you've already seen all the negative, all the positive sides of the person, and you end up just kind of like being at the extent or at the end of it already, exhausting everything, trying everything out. So if you're in a place where you've tried everything out and you've already, looked at all possibilities, then maybe it would be better to end it, rather than in situationships where it's just possibility, it's just what ifs, it's just potential. And that thought can drive people into an overthinking, sort of anxious mindset, because what they have aren't facts but thoughts, ideas of what could be, what should have been, and so that's harder to move on from. And a lot of times they do get left hanging without closure, no clarity, so that again gives space for that overthinking, that anxiety, compared to those relationships where it's probably clear why it had to end.